Hey everyone, Whitney here with COLŌ Architecture of Belonging, a design studio based in Missoula, Montana. I'm here in the Rattlesnake neighborhood, right next to the Rattlesnake Wilderness, and I am at a recently completed project that I'm hoping to give you a little mini tour of and explain some of the design thinking. Here we go. So this is the home of some residents who have some small dogs, and they've got this huge existing deck that is not built to code and is not in the best shape, and they wanted to figure out a way to cover this deck because and to cover a portion of their yard because they've got some small dogs that can't get out through the snow in the winter. And so they brought me in really for the purpose of the dogs. And this deck would be wildly expensive to have to replace. And sometimes when you start a design project, when you go to permit it, if you're touching parts of a project that are needing to be updated or not built to code, if you touch it, you can trigger the city or county requiring you to replace all of it and bring it up to code. So in the design process, it's really important to be strategic about what parts of the existing infrastructure or house or deck or yard, slopes, whatever it is, you got to be really careful about what you touch. And in this case, we wanted to design so that they could have a covered deck that doesn't trigger any additional work than beyond what's necessary, and a place for the dogs to access the yard that's not covered in snow. And here's what we developed. This is the finished product. It's a double roof. There was a tricky situation that the builder was having a hard time solving, which is how do we do a continuous deck or a continuous roof of any kind when the roof lines are doing such interesting things. This is their garage. It's got a roof there. You've got this bump out here. The eaves are high overhead. How do you solve that? Well, my solution was to just do a double roof, two different roof systems. We've got sky lifts there holding up this section, which is its own independent structure. And then we've got a ledger over there. These are all glue lambs. This is Alaskan yellow cedar here because it's gonna get a little bit more weather. So we've got Alaskan yellow cedar, and everything else is steel. And then this beautiful polygol material, which is virtually indestructible and still allows you to experience the beauty of these giant trees in the backyard while still getting UV protection, and it cuts the sun exposure. I think this particular one is maybe by 50%. So it's not dark in here. You still get to, it softens the light. It softens the light the same way that trees do. The way that we solved the solution, the way that we solved not having to mess with this deck at all, was simply by taking the beams all the way out and doing individual footings and having it not interact with this at all. So we just floated it out beyond. The other consideration they were having was about privacy. You know, they said that they wanted to maybe put up a wall or replace their fence with something because you can see their neighbors are over there. They were thinking maybe they want a little bit more privacy. So doing just a little design gesture to create a sense of enclosure, we came up with these screens. And these screens do a lot to kind of orient the attention back through into this space while still connecting out to this magnificent yard here in the Rattlesnake. And the other funny thing was about integrating this design with the landscape. I don't know if I can uncover it here, but we were going to do a foundation system that would have been completely invisible, would have gone all the way into the ground, but because of the giant boulders here, we actually had to pour sonotube footings that were not very attractive. And you can see this plate is, you maybe can't tell, but this plate is about 8 to 12 inches off the ground, and beneath that was this really ugly concrete. And so design needs to include landscape. Architecture and landscape cannot be separated, and it's remarkable to me that we talk about them like they're separate and they're separate professions. They really need to be integrated. So what we've done here is disguise that with something beautiful. We've now got this great raised bed, essentially, with these beautiful rocks that matches the existing landscaping that they had here. We've got those beautiful rocks that's mounded up. They've got soil in there, mounded up, that covers all the footings. There's a bunch of them. They were hideous. And that wraps around all the way through here disguising it. No one would ever know. It's brilliant. And if they ever were to choose to, in this case, the client is really interested in zero maintenance landscaping, which is why it's all rocks and mulch. But if one wanted to, you could easily plant some beautiful bushes or crawling vines through here. I mean, you can imagine how magnificent this would be, having greenery growing all the way through it. Easy with the drip system or some native once they're established, for that to be super low maintenance. But that's not the interest of the client right now. This section over here was added for additional privacy screening, and we just created an extra, and you know, using the landscape design, we just created an extra little bed here that they could plant out at any point, or even as it currently is. It just feels really nice. It's getting some of those soft edges into something that's otherwise very rectilinear. The reason why we added this gravel path beyond just circulation is that we decided, for design reasons, not to add a gutter, which means water, when it comes off that roof, comes sheeting off of this. And if that comes down and pounds the ground, we're gonna be getting a lot of erosion, and it's gonna be wet and soppy and a mess. So this rockery path was put in so that it can break that water, disperse it into the ground, and all times of year, you can still walk through this zone. Let's see, what else do I wanna mention about this? We'll just do a little walkthrough to get the final view. So, you know, my point here is that I was brought on board when the builder was already here, and the builder's amazing. His name's Andy. He's an awesome guy. And the builder and the clients were scratching their heads going, how the heck do we solve this? And I showed up and said, oh, let's do a double roof. And so I really want to invite people to bring in designers earlier on who are really capable and creative of coming up with solutions that really hit all the marks. We hit all the marks on this project, and I got some really wonderful reviews from the client. So my name's Whitney, COLŌ, Architecture of Belonging here in Missoula, Montana. Thanks for tuning in.